19-year-old male, the sole survivor, remains in hospital with serious injuries not considered life-threatening. I'm also able to tell you at this time that based on information collected during the course of the investigation, we believe that this was an intentional act and that the victims of this horrific incident were targeted. We believe the victims were targeted because of their Islamic faith. In a moment, I will invite Detective Superintendent Paul Waite to share some details of the investigation. Questions about the investigation will be deferred to Superintendent Waite. As the investigation is still very active, there will be limited details that can be released at this time. We must let the investigation run its course. Before I turn it over to Detective Superintendent Waite, I would like to offer my sincere condolences on behalf of the London Police Service to the family, friends, and loved ones of the victims of this tragedy. Our thoughts remain with the young boy still in hospital. Supports for individuals impacted by this tragedy have been mobilized, and we will release information on accessing those supports at the conclusion of this news conference. We understand that this event may cause fear and anxiety in the community, and in particular, the Muslim community, and any community targeted by hate. I want to reassure all Londoners that all of us on the call today, and many others, stand with you and support you. There is no tolerance in this community for individuals who, motivated by hate, target others with violence. Today, we have met with community leaders and have offered our support to the affected communities now and in the days and weeks ahead as they grieve the loss and injury of their brothers and sisters. I'd like to take a moment to thank all first responders who attended to the incident and provided life-saving efforts to the victims. This is a traumatic event for them as well. We continue to actively support our members, and I know our emergency services partners are doing the same. I'd also like to thank members of the community who stopped to offer support and assistance last night, those who called 911, and those who remained with the victims until first responders arrived. Events such as this are thankfully rare, but incredibly traumatic to all those involved. At the conclusion of this press conference, we will be sharing telephone lines that have been set up to support our community members and to encourage those who who wish to reach out to do so. Once again, I offer my profound sympathy to the victims and their families and to the London community. As when one of us suffers tragic loss, we're all impacted. I'll now turn things over to Detective Superintendent Paul Waite.
On Sunday, June 6, 2021, at 8:40 p.m., the 5 victims of this incident were walking together on the west sidewalk of Hyde Park Road at the intersection of South Carriage Road in London. They were waiting at the intersection to cross to the east side of Hyde Park Road. The weather at the time was clear and dry with good visibility. A black pickup truck occupied by a lone male traveling southbound on Hyde Park Road mounted the curb and struck the 5 victims waiting to cross the intersection. The pickup truck continued to drive southbound on Hyde Park Road at a high rate of speed. It was observed to turn left on Oxford Street, not stopping for the red light. Several 911 calls were received, and police, fire, and paramedic services were immediately dispatched to the scene. At approximately 8:45 p.m., the lone occupant of the vehicle stopped in the parking lot of a mall located at Oxford Street and Cherry Hill Boulevard, a distance of approximately 7 kilometers from the scene. Police attended this location and placed the driver under arrest. Family members of the victims have requested that the names of the victims not be released at this time. The postmortems are scheduled to occur tomorrow at the Center of Forensic Sciences in Toronto. There is evidence that this was a planned, premeditated act motivated by hate. It is believed that these victims were targeted because they were Muslim. There is no known previous connection between the suspect and the victims. As a result of the investigation, Nathaniel Veltman, 20 years of age, of London, has been charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempt murder. He's expected to appear in court today. The scene of the collision is still closed to the public, and we ask that people continue to avoid the area. A tip line has been set up. The number is 519-661-5515, extension 5842. Anyone with information regarding this incident is urged to call in. The Crime Stoppers phone number, 1-800-222-TIPS, is also available for people to call in anonymously.
Thank you, Detective Superintendent Waite. I would now like to invite the Mayor of London, Ed Holder, to share a few words with our community.
Thank you, Sandra. I'll keep my comments brief, because words fail on a day as dark as this, but still words matter. I speak on behalf of City Council and all Londoners when I say our hearts are broken. I grieve for the family, 3 generations of whom are now deceased. I weep for their loved ones. I pray for the recovery of the child who still remains in hospital. I've ordered flags outside City Hall lowered for the next 3 days. First, I'd like to thank members of the Police Service, the London Fire Department, Middlesex London EMS, for your compassion and professionalism in responding to this traumatic event. You make us proud on a daily basis, and now in our darkest hours. You know, Deputy Mayor Josh Morgan and I met earlier today with leaders in London's Muslim community at the mosque to express our profound sadness. Speaking directly to our broader beloved Muslim community now, I want each of you to know that ours is a safe community. You should feel safe in London. This is as much your home as it is mine. And while your hearts are heavy, I want you to feel secure living in our community. Let me be clear, this was an act of mass murder perpetrated against Muslims, against Londoners, and rooted in unspeakable hatred. The magnitude of such hatred can make one question who we are as a city and who we are as Londoners. It's up to us, though, all of us, to answer that question through not only our words, but our actions. Look, we can say this isn't who we are, and I know that to be true. Words, though, are not enough. We must demonstrate, behave, and act on those words. This act of Islamophobia, this act of unspeakable hatred, must be followed by acts of compassion, acts of kindness, acts of humanity, acts of solidarity, empathy, justice, and above all, love. The love we hold for our Muslim brothers and sisters in London is unwavering and unconditional. All Londoners do benefit from your kindness and your goodwill. We are not merely a city, we are a community. We are family. And as such, we wrap our collective arms around you today as we grieve, and together our hearts will mend.
Thank you, Mayor Holder. I now invite Nawaz Tahir, London lawyer and Muslim community leader and spokesperson, to say a few words.
Good afternoon, thank you. Our hearts are broken, our minds numb with pain. Last night, our community suffered an immense tragedy. A Muslim family, out for a walk on a beautiful summer evening, was run down by a car driven by a man who appears to have been filled with hate. 1 child remains in hospital, and 4 people will never return home again. The horror that has visited this family, the Canadian Muslim community, and Canada at large last night is unfathomable. These were innocent human beings who were killed simply because they're Muslim. The London Muslim community has a long history in this city. This is our home, and it is as much a part of us as we are a part of it. The individual that did this doesn't understand that. We will stand strong against hate. We will stand strong against Islamophobia. We will respond to those trying to inflict terror on our community with love. We will survive this test through faith, through love, through our unshakable belief in God and our quest for justice. Hate will never overshadow the light of love. Make no mistake about it, justice must and will be done. Every Londoner, every Ontarian, every Canadian must stop and ask ourselves, how do we make sure this never happens again? January 29th, 2017, the Quebec City Mosque Massacre. June 7, 2021, a horrific act of terror on a loving family in London. September 12th, 2020, a slaying at the IMO Mosque in Toronto. We simply cannot add another date. We must confront and stamp out Islamophobia and Islamophobic violence. Not tomorrow, today. For the sake of our children, our families, our communities. At this time, I ask that we please respect the privacy of the family. Please let them absorb this devastation privately. Please respect their wishes. Please let the London Police do their job and follow their processes. I want to thank the police, Police Chief Williams, Mayor Holder, the entire police team for your assistance in this difficult time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tahir. This concludes our formal remarks. Just a reminder that at the end of this conference, we will be sharing community support line telephone numbers on the screen and ask that you share them with the public. I will now invite questions from the media for Chief Williams or Detective Superintendent Waite via the question and answer function at the bottom of your screen. If you could please indicate your name, media agency, and question, we will ask them in the order we receive them. The first question is from Mike Hagar, Globe and Mail. Did the suspect say anything during the attack that demonstrated anti-Muslim hatred?
I can't get into specific evidence other than to say that there was evidence that this incident was hate motivated.
A question from Craig Needles of Blackburn News. Did police or 911 operators have any contact with the suspect before the family was killed on Hyde Park Road?
The suspect did not have any contact with the London police prior to this incident. There was contact with police services, not the London Police Service in the past, nothing of a very serious nature.
From Mark Douglas, 680 News. Did the suspect confess to targeting Muslims? Is he a member of a known hate group?
Again, I can't get into specific evidence of what he may or may not have said. As far as the investigation has shown so far, we don't know of his membership in any specific hate group.
Just a follow-up question from Mike Hagar for Detective Superintendent Waite. He's asking if there's a presence online that investigators have used to determine his motivation.
We gather evidence from a variety of sources, including online. That's all I can comment on that.
Andrew Lupton from CBC News, London. Does the accused have a record or any history of acts like this? And is he from London?
I've mentioned his previous involvement with police. He does not have a previous record of criminal offenses or criminal convictions, and he resides in London.
A question from Dale Carruthers from the London Free Press. Witnesses reported that the suspect was wearing body armor at the time of his arrest. Can you confirm this?
He was wearing a vest that appeared to be like body armor.
A question from Colin Fries, Globe and Mail. Are the London Police Service working with federal police and prosecutors to lay potential Terrorism Act charges?
Yes, we've received several phone calls from our policing partners offering their assistance, including the RCMP, and we will be liaising with them in terms of potential terrorism charges, along with liaison with the Ministry of the Attorney General.
A question from Adrian from City News, City TV. What can you tell us about the arrest? How was he apprehended at Cherry Hill Mall?
Police attended the mall and he was arrested without incident.
Another question from Dale Carruthers, just looking for the correct spelling of the suspect's name.
Is Nathaniel Veltman. It's Veltman, 20 years of age.
Another question from Mike Hagar. Does London have a hate crimes unit? If so, how many investigators are in this unit and are they leading this investigation?
London Police have officers designated as specialists in hate crime. The major crime section is leading the investigation as it's murder. The offenses are murder.
Mark Douglas from 680 News again. The mayor called this mass murder. Do police agree with that description?
It was the murder of 4 innocent people.
A follow-up from Adrian at City TV. What leads you to believe that this was an intentional attack and that the family was targeted because of their Islamic faith?
We gather evidence from a variety of sources, and as a result, or at this stage in the investigation, that's our belief, is that it was an intentional act and they were targeted because of their Islamic faith.
A question from Jacqueline LaBelle, 980 CFPL, for Detective Superintendent Waite. Chief Williams said it's believed that this was an intentional act, but can police say whether it was planned well in advance?
It was pre-planned and premeditated. That's why first-degree murder charges were laid.
Another question from Dale Carruthers from London Free Press. Did the suspect have a knife on him at the time of his arrest?
That's part of evidence. I'm not going to confirm or deny that.
From London Free Press, Dale Carruthers again. Is this the largest killing in London's history?
I believe it is in terms of the most people murdered at one time, but I haven't checked into the history, but I believe it is.
A question from Colin Fries. Do you know where the family had been prior to the accident, where they had been and where they were going?
No, that's part of the investigation. I'm not going to comment on that.
A question from Catherine McDonald, Global News. Can you reassure members of the Muslim community in London that they're safe?
I can take that question. Thanks, Catherine. I want to reassure members of the Muslim community and any other community who are targeted by faith that you are safe. And the mayor alluded to London being a safe city, and it is a safe city. I want you to know that all the resources of the London Police Service are dedicated to this investigation, and it'll remain like that until we see it through to its conclusion, however long that takes. We take hate-motivated crime very seriously. We have specially trained investigators who have resources at their disposal from across the department to oversee and to run these investigations. And we will do whatever is required to keep our community safe. And we stand with the community. We understand their concerns.
Another question from Mark Douglas at 680 News. Did the suspect truck display signs with hate messages, or was material found inside indicating hate motivation?
I don't have any information on that.
Another question. Were members of the family wearing traditional clothing of any kind? Also, have police ruled out Mr. Veltman having any accomplices? What can you tell Londoners scared that this suspect may not be alone?
At this point in the investigation, there is no indication that there were others involved with Mr. Veltman in committing these offenses. It's part of the investigation, and it's still early stages, so that has not been ruled out, but at this stage, we have no evidence to suggest that.
A question from Nicole Martin, CHCH News. Were officers alerted to any suspicious behavior or online activity from Veltman in the days or hours prior to the murders?
No.
From Andrew Lupton, CBC News. Can you provide the ages of the deceased again and state their relationship to each other? Are they members of the same family?
They are members of the same family. If you just give me a second. Deceased was a 74-year-old female, a 46-year-old male, a 44-year-old female, and a 15-year-old female. And there was the 9-year-old male who had survived the incident.
From Catherine McDonald, is a search warrant being carried out at Veltman's home? Also, did he live with his parents?
The investigation is still ongoing, and I anticipate a number of search warrants will be executed in the days to come. He did not live with his parents.
Okay, and the last question from Dale Carruthers, London Free Press. How old was the woman who died at the scene?
I believe that was the 74-year-old female.
Thank you. That concludes our press conference. Thank you everyone for joining us today.
Is the media off the call now, Sandesha?
No, not yet, sir.